Hi everyone, and welcome to this second session of Rap Knowledge Live. Let's allow one extra minute for the attendees to keep on entering to the meeting, and then we can start point 03 without more delays. Okay, let's start, and people will be able to keep entering while the meeting is on without any problem. Well, let me just go to my presentation mode. As I was saying, welcome and thank you for being here in this second session of Rap Knowledge Live. Today we're going to be talking um, about the root review tool, and I am glad to introduce you to our presenters. We will be talking with Dr. Susie Charman. She is the Executive Director of the Road Safety Foundation. And also James Bradford will join us, the technical director at IRAP. And well, myself, you may know me from the last session and from the training and accreditation arena. My name is Franco Asato, and I am the training and accreditation coordinator with IRAP. I'm gonna be on the moderation of this session. Just um, a brief overview of the agenda. We will see what the road review tool is about, the role of this tool in the IRAP methodology. Susie is going to talk us about that. Then James is going to explain us how the road review tool works. And close the meeting, Susie is going to talk about a case of application of this tool in the United Kingdom. For this, we will have a 60 minutes session, including some time for Q&A, questions and answer at the end of the presentation. And at the end of the meeting, you will receive a quick overview of the meeting itself and the video with the recording. And also a little survey, because we would like to know what you think of this session and the others, and what sessions would you like to have in the future. So please stay on once we finish our session. Just last slide that I want to show is that, as you may see, you are all muted. You are unable to open your mic and speak. This is in order to maintain the order of the presentation and to allow Susie and James to present their bits. But you are welcome to post your questions as in the panel that you have in your screen, and I will be on the receiving of those questions and delivering those to the speakers. And also at the end of the presentation, as I said, we would really like you to open your mic and talk and ask the questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Susie. Susie, the floor is yours. Let's give 1 minute. Hello, Susie, can you?
Hi, Franco. I'm so sorry. Apologies, everybody. I'm remoting in from the top of a very tall building in London where the mobile signal is surprisingly poor. So if my audio isn't coming through very well, then I'm sure James will be able to take over. But can you hear me okay at the moment?
We can hear you perfectly now.
That's fantastic. So thank you so much for having me, and apologies for the disruption of my current environment. So I'm here to talk a little bit about what the route review tool is and why we thought it was a good idea to bring it about. So just a little bit of background. So next slide, please, Franco. Most of you will already know that in a typical IRAP survey, video imagery is coded for more than 50 attributes every 100 meters to produce a data set describing all of the aspects of the road that can have an impact on the likelihood or severity of crashes. And Franco, if you could just click through all of the attributes that we currently record in an IRAP survey will appear. There's several clicks to go, so apologies again for the lack of coordination. It's very difficult when you're not controlling your own screen. So keep on clicking through. So all of this data is available from video surveys that we undertake and that are coded by our coding teams. Next slide, please. This information about the road is combined using the IRAP model to build a picture of how risk varies across a network for vehicle occupants, motorcyclists, pedestrians, and cyclists. Underpinning the star ratings that you can see on the left is lots of information about the component parts of risk by crash type that can help road authorities to get to grips with what types of risk are present along the routes for different road users. The graph on the right shows for one stretch of road how the vehicle occupant risk changes and the component parts of the risk by crash type. Next slide, please. The more granular star rating scores that underpin the banded star ratings that we're all familiar with are combined with flows to generate an estimate of potential fatal and serious injuries. The map here shows where fatal and serious injuries are expected to be in the future, with darker colours indicating a higher concentration than the lighter colours. Again, this can be done for all road users or for each road user type in isolation. Next slide, please. The IRAP countermeasure logic includes 90 different countermeasures, and in fact, a few more recently have been added for urban environments. These range from things like clearing roadside obstacles to introducing central hatching and footways. Every 100 meters, the system considers the precise kind of risk present, an estimated fatal and serious injuries, and whether any of the countermeasures are likely to be effective in reducing that risk. The measures that meet a set benefit cost ratio threshold over the desired appraisal period are compiled into a safer roads investment plan. For each countermeasure in the safer roads investment plan, you can see the length or number of sites it could be applied to, the number of fatal and serious injuries that might be prevented, the monetized benefit of those savings, a rough cost of implementation, and a benefit cost ratio. If you click again, if you click on an orange named countermeasure, it shows you the locations where the system thinks that the measure would be cost effective. The Safer Roads Investment Plan is, of course, a modelled plan of treatments that warrants review and consideration. You won't want to or be able to implement all of the treatments in reality, but consider treatment is suggested. The model is really saying that there might be a treatment that could be cost effective at that location. It very much needs an experienced human engineer to be the key decision maker. If you progress the slides again, please. Obviously, if I carry that right slide. Excellent, thank you. The route review tool has been developed for road safety engineers to take the IRAP results from the Safer Roads Investment Plan forwards towards implementation, giving safe system inspiration and an appreciation of risk to the engineer, whilst also allowing them to bring their insights, their local knowledge and their expertise to the results to make sure that the final schemes that they develop are practicable and effective. The starting point is the Safer Roads Investment Plan, which, if you just click, please, is model generated. And it gives you safe system inspiration. But the Safer Roads Investment Plan is just a starting point. In this particular tool, the route review tool, you can then apply your local knowledge and expertise to the Safer Roads Investment Plan to refine it to generate a practical and effective user-defined investment plan, a UDIP. The UDIP can then support your business case. If you click again, please. Okay. So the idea is that the tool supports you in interacting with the IRAP results and model, making it possible to get an estimate of the fatal and serious injury savings from the scheme that you're promoting, and show the impact of your plans on the star ratings and fatal and serious injuries. If you go to the next slide, please. So how does this fit in with the rest of the RAP star rating process? So you can see in this lovely diagram that James kindly put together that your starting point when you're doing an IRAP survey is always to gather data, whether that's from pre-existing data sources such as telematics, speed data, or through other AI RAP initiatives, or also coding, whether it's from manual coding of videos or whether it's from detailed designs. The data are then fed into the IRAP feeder tools for processing, which generates star ratings, fatal and serious injury estimations, and a safer roads investment plan. Following on from this, what we want to do is to move one more step closer to implementation. So the user-defined investment plan that can be generated using the route review tool takes you on that next step. Of course, it's always been possible within VIDA and the IRAP system to model your own designs and plans of countermeasures, but this is rather fiddly, and it requires quite an expert view of the VIDA system and model. And what we're trying to do here is to put the power back in the hands of the practitioners and the road safety engineers so that they don't have to become expert coders. They can just test their schemes and their plans using the route review tool. So I'm going to hand over to James now, who's going to show you the tool.
Thank you very much, Susie. So, Franco, if you could go on to the next slide and click through the animation. So as Susie introduced, the purpose of the route review tool is very much to enable us to create those user-defined investment plans. But before you can do that, actually understanding the safer roads investment plan and what it means, the risk on the road, is really quite important. So if you go on to the next slide, Franco. So our suggested way through it would be to, before you start doing anything, is to actually go in there and review the data set as it is for the current route, exploring as the risk is changing for different road users as it goes down the road, thinking through what's your standard approach going to be to that road, to try and make that road as consistent as possible as it allows you. And then once you've got that one, also building into there, what are the driven speeds likely to be after the upgrades? Likewise, are there any of the user flows going to change? And to think all of that through, and then from that, then start selecting the countermeasures. So in the route review tool, it'll then allow you to actually go in there and change which countermeasures are selected for each 100 meters, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then after that, and you've gone through the whole route you want to change, you can actually generate the user-defined investment plan. This will provide you with the star ratings, as they would be with the countermeasures you've requested, and also all the economics behind those. So Franco, if you pass over control of the screen to me, I'll give everybody a bit of a demo.
Perfect, James. You have control now.
Excellent. Is VIDA coming up for everybody?
Yes.
Brilliant. So as a lot of you will be used to, this is what VIDA looks like. What we've done recently is added this section at the bottom for all the different RAP apps so they can start collecting together. And the button that you'll want to use is this one right in the middle, or right in my middle, which is the route review tool. When you click on that, what it'll do is it'll take you across to the route review tool. If you're brand new to the route review tool, it'll ask you if you're happy for VIDA's data to be shared with the route review tool. This is standard practice with all the RAP apps. And once you've accepted that, you'll land on a screen like this. This provides you with access to all the different programs that you have access to, or have a data set with creator access in one of those. So I'll expand the XRAP demonstration I've set up, then the region, and a project. So here you can see I've got a few different data sets. What I'll do is I'll select the first one I'm going to demo. What this is you can see that it opens up the data set. If it's a data set you've never opened before in the route review tool, or if you've done any updates to the base data, what you'll need to do is download it from VIDA. But once it's done that first time, you don't need to worry about doing it again. So then you can actually open up that data set. So this will take you across from this more dataset selection page into the graphical interface or the mapping interface for it. So the first thing it'll do, it'll open you up in the location that you're interested in, and then you can actually turn on the relevant layers. So I'll go onto the layers tool, and you can see the layers by default that we make available are the star ratings for each of the user group. So that's the smooth ones, and then the raw star ratings followed by the fatality estimations. And for this purpose, I will just turn on the fatality estimations for all users together combined. Other funky tools you can play around with is things like the side-by-side view. So if you wanted to compare between the fatality estimations and the star ratings, or if you wanted to compare between before and after star ratings, that's certainly possible. And here you can see I've got the vehicle star ratings on the right-hand side, so you can see the risk changing relative to the FSI estimation. So if we go back to the IRAP tools within the route view tool, you can see that at the top level, you've got options for your data set. So here you can open up the investment plan. So this is the baseline one, so the Safer Roads investment plan. Whilst that loads, I'll show you the other ones. You can also open up the star rating table for the baseline. So here you can see all of the different countermeasures, where they were triggered, and bear in mind this is just one single road I'm looking at here. The relevant fatal serious injuries avoided over the period. So this data is actually for a 20-year cycle. Likewise, just as you get within VDA, you get the safety benefits and the costs. This is in euros, and of course the benefit cost ratio. You can also do things like download that data and other similar things. Likewise, just as you can within VDA, you can have the star ratings coming up, and you can look at that, either the 100-meter raw star ratings or the smooth star ratings for each of the relevant user groups. So that's your reporting levels at the data set. Then you can actually expand. So this is your road and then your section under the same name. And you can see the individual carriageway that I've got here. Under the carriageway, you've got different options. You can then use should look again at the Safe Roads investment plan, but bear in mind this is filtered down to that individual road. So if you've got a data set with multiple road sections in it, that's how to actually filter it down to there. The other tool that's available at the carriageway level is the strip plan. What this does is it provides you with a quick overview for the whole section, for the first 3 kilometers of the section, but you can index through those, of which countermeasures were triggered within the Safe Roads investment plan, and then which ones actually finally made it through all the economics rules and stuff. So anything that's coloured in blue means that it actually got through to the Safer Roads investment plan and was suggested at that location. Anything in orange was actually triggered but was overridden for either economic reasons or because there was a better countermeasure that was suggested at that location that would have overlapped with it. You can index through to, so you can see up here, I'm looking at the first 3 kilometers. You can then index through to the other 3 kilometers as you go down the road. Bear in mind that the route view tool has been designed in such a way that it's almost like your desk at work, where you decide where and how you arrange different things, different piece of paper, and which reports you're interested in. So very much find a way and a setup that's useful for you. Next on the list is the Fsi Profile. What this shows you is the risk of the FSI risk that's been estimated for the relevant user groups. And here I've got vehicle occupants, but you can swap between them. And then the individual crash types and how they're varying along the road every 100 meters. If you want to zoom in, you can do a bounding box around it and then move up and down on the axes or double click to zoom back out. Lastly, at the carriageway level is you've got the speed profile. So this will show you how the speed varies along the route in terms of speed limits, operating speed, 85th percentile and mean. So here you can actually see that the 85th, the mean speed and the speed limit are on the same line, which is why you can only see one of the colors. Next up, you can actually expand the carriageway, and that will actually show you the individual 100 meters as you go down the road. So at location 800 meters down the road, you can see that there's a number in brackets here called of 10. That's saying that 10 different countermeasures were actually triggered originally in the strip for this location. And you can then go and view those and edit those. So let's have a look at the countermeasures specifically for this 100 meters. You notice that when I open that, it actually zooms in onto the relevant 100 meters we're interested in and colors it a light blue color. So here you can see the countermeasures that were triggered and got through on the economics rules. And then the ones below that are the ones that got triggered but didn't make it through. So the good thing about this is if you can't, say, build one of these top countermeasures that it's suggesting, also consider the ones below. And then if you wanted a completely different countermeasure, you can use the Add Countermeasure button and now provide you the full list of all the different countermeasures that are available. So I'm going to pop this down the bottom right. Next up, you can look at the baseline attributes. So the nice bit about this is if you've got a countermeasure coming out and you're going, well, I don't fully understand why that countermeasure has been triggered. That's not how that location is or what should be suggested there. You can go back to the original coding and check that and see whether there's something you've missed in how the road has been originally coded with the risk. And actually that countermeasure would then make sense. Or if there are any improvements that need to be made to the coding because the road has changed over time. So you can look at any of the different road features. Lastly, you can have a look at the road imagery. We've got two versions of that available, both the Google Street View and Mapillary. What we found is typically Google Street View is more consistent around the world. But of course, we want to give that option. So if you've collected your own data and uploaded it to Mapillary, you could load it through the system. So I'm going to turn on Street View. So here you can see what this road looks like. And it's just coming to the end of a divided carriageway and going into an undivided one. So let's go on to the next 100 meters to make it easier to understand. So here you can see the road. You can see a marker for where the Street View image currently is. And if I was to pan, you can see which way you're looking. You can also move inside the 100 meters or even into the next one and turn back. The software's been set up so that it's only when you click the next or the previous button that it'll move the marker back to the original bit of the 100 meters. So if I click on the next one, you'll see that happening. There you go. So we've moved into the next 100 meters. We're now at the start of it. So what the route review tool allows you to do is go down that 100 meters, down that road, check all the different countermeasures, see which ones that are relevant and applicable, could be built there. There will be countermeasures that come out that the knowledge of the system or knowledge of the road is required that VIDA actually hasn't been given. So it's about the local context, and this is where your road engineering expertise really comes in, about converting what is a high-level investment plan into a much more detailed one, saying this is exactly what should be built in this location. So you can either turn off the different countermeasures that you don't think actually you want to build and turn on other ones. Or likewise, you can go through and actually look for long lengths. So say you wanted to put in some central hatchings for a long length of road. You'd also be able to do it through here and actually say, I want that to be active. And then that would change, and you can do that multiple times down the road. So what you'd do is work your way down the road, build up your consistent approach, and then come back to the beginning and go through it again, making the edits for the countermeasures is what we'd recommend. You can also notice that, I won't save it, as I index down the road, it will show you exactly where you are on the strip plan, on the Fsi profile and the speed profile. So you can actually look at it in detail and say, okay, these are the countermeasure, the crash types that I'm seeing at this location. These are the speeds. What kind of countermeasures would be appropriate there? Once you've gone back and made that first sweep of that consistent road and making updated, what we'd recommend is you go back to the beginning again of the road and actually go and look at spot locations for things like junction treatments and intersect pedestrian crossings and stuff like that. So very much the location-based treatments. Finally, you'll have gone through the whole system. You'll have actually created all the countermeasures you want in your user-defined investment plan. You can then, if you want to change the economics, you can go in there and change the analysis period, or if you needed different countermeasure costs, you wanted to make them very site-specific ones for that road, you can do that. And then you can actually send your file for processing. What this will do is it will build up the file with all the new countermeasures in it, send it across to VEDA, do the calculations, and then after it's done those calculations, you can pull it back. So once you've done that, you can then open up your data, and I'll go back to one I've created earlier. And so this was a new investment plan I created off the back of it. I'll turn the background layer back on again. So unfortunately, this is one I didn't actually do earlier, apologies. What would happen is that user-defined investment plan would come up just like the baseline one, but would be with all the countermeasures that you had selected and edited. Likewise, the user-defined investment table would show you what the new star ratings would be. And then finally, on the layers one, you'd also get a user-defined option down here, which would show you your new star ratings as a map, and likewise your new fatality estimations as a map. So at this point, I will pass it back over to Susie.
Thanks so much, James. So what we're going to do now is just take a little bit of a brief dive into what we've been up to in the UK with the route review tool. So a little bit of a potted history to begin with is that back in 2018, we were asked by the Department for Transport here to help them with their first Safer Roads Fund, which was a programme to address safety on the highest risk local authority A roads in England. When we embarked on this, we were a very, very small team, just me working part-time and a couple of semi-retired part-time road safety engineers. And we needed to support 50 routes really quickly to come up with actionable investment plans. So that was 50 routes across 30 local authorities. And only one of those authorities had any experience with IRAP at all. So modelling lots of schemes manually using VEDA, where you go in and change core coding features and use very clever little methodologies for modelling, would have been really difficult, because we'd have had to have got the really precise and accurate information about the schemes out of the local authorities, translate these into coding changes and so on, and we just simply couldn't do it. So instead of this, James developed a UDIP spreadsheet which displayed the countermeasures that were in the Safer Roads Investment Plan, and you could effectively turn them on and off by overwriting in the cells and putting an F for final in the relevant cells along the strip plan effectively. then the spreadsheet could be used to create a new model of the proposed countermeasures in VIDA, and it would auto change all of the coding values that were in a new project effectively in VIDA. And of course, it was great because it meant that we had a systematic way of local authorities telling us what it was that they wanted to actually do. But it was a little bit clunky, I hope James doesn't mind me saying. And there were lots of errors because the road authorities that we were working with found it difficult to know which chainage in the IRAP system pertained to which location. So they said they'd upgrade a junction, but that junction was actually 100 meters in the other direction. And of course, then the model would say, there's no junction, there's no benefit for upgrading the junction. So although it was quite challenging with the modelling, the Safer Roads one was a really big success. So we saw £100 million invested that would prevent 1,450 fatal and serious injuries over 20 years with a benefit cost ratio of 4.4. So these were schemes that have been developed and fine-tuned, and local knowledge and understanding applied to the recommendations in the Safer Roads investment plan and so on. In the interim period, we made things a little bit better. We were using a GIS system that could display the chainage and the video and the countermeasure recommendations. That was a little bit better post that experience. Next slide, please. In the meantime, we've been working to scope out further investments with National Highways, who are our strategic road operator in England. And what we wanted to do with them to make sure that the data that they collect every 5 years through their investment, their IRAP surveys, was being used to its full effect. So we've had this training initiative that we helped them build, and it's a really extensive training initiative to make sure that everybody in the organisation knew what IRAP was, understood what the data available were, and so on. And part of that pathway, one of the 3 pathways that you can see sort of 2/3 of the way along, was for a route review process. So we were teaching them how to undertake route review using safe system thinking. We needed therefore a new tool to get working well and very quickly, which is where the new route review tool that James has demonstrated came in. Most recently, in Easter, the Safer Roads Fund 3 was launched. So it's back to local authority A roads, and we worked very rapidly across 27 schemes this time, and it was the first real concerted use of the route review tool. There are a greater number of urban routes included in the investment portfolio, so the work that we've been doing on urban countermeasures became really important. And so within those schemes, we've seen a greater number of measures that focus on improving safety for walking and cycling, cycleways, footways, pedestrian crossings, flush crossings, and we even attempted modelling a Cyclops-style Dutch roundabout and so on. The early estimates of this programme was that between them, those 27 schemes would require a £47.5 million investment, which should prevent around 760 fatal and serious injuries over the next 20 years, with a benefit to society of 420 million. Once the whole life costs are factored in for the schemes, the overall benefit cost ratio is estimated at 7.4, meaning that for every pound invested, the societal benefit would be £7.40. Next slide, please. So along with the route review tool, because we were working on those 27 schemes so rapidly, we developed I think quite an exciting safe system aligned route review process, which is sort of mapped out on the screen. We've used that in the Safer Roads Fund project, and we'll continue to use this in the support of National Highways and others as they move through their implementation endeavours. So we start here with an initial meeting with the road authority staff, just to take a step back and really understand how the road's performing. And we do that by looking at the fatal and serious injury worms, the Fsi Profile in the route review tool, and the overall star ratings. We look at the component parts of risk, we look at what's in the Safer Roads investment plan, because it can give us a clue about which direction to go in. But very much in that first initial meeting, we don't go delving into modelling countermeasure changes, which is the real temptation. We take that step back and we have a good strategic think about how that road needs to function, who it needs to support, and how it's performing currently. We then ask the road authority to help us refine the IRAP baseline study as much as we can. And here what we do is we get them to review intersecting road volumes in particular, and also pedestrian and cycle flows. We find it really, really difficult to get accurate data on pedestrian and cycle flows. So here it becomes really important to access that local knowledge with the road authority. And in due course, there'll be bits built into the route review tool to help support this process, because it's really important to get that baseline modelled really, really well before you embark on creating business cases that are really going to go to be put forward for funding, like really kind of refined business cases. So next we look at the active travel demands on the route, and if it looks like it's being suppressed, i.e. you haven't got as much walking and cycling as you could rightfully expect, we will elevate the active travel levels in the model. So we have a baseline, and then we create an elevated active travel baseline, if you like. So here what you might find is, if you say I really want this route to support more walking and cycling, you might actually say, well, if it stayed as it was, I'd have more fatal and serious injury on that route. And that then becomes your starting point to model improvements against, rather than just accepting the level of walking and cycling that you have in the current day as being what you're going to have forever. What we then do is we have a speed management approach meeting. So this is where we discuss potential approaches to speed management on the route, particularly if the actual speeds don't align with survivable speeds. So within the safe system, we know the tolerance that the human body has if you have a side impact crash at a junction, or if you have a head-on crash, or if you have a crash involving someone walking or cycling. So we know what the safe speeds are for different crashes. So we have a think about that. We have a think about what we might bring in terms of measures that will help support lowered mean speeds. So that might be a speed limit change. It might be a speed limit change paired with some enforcement technology, or it might be a speed limit change paired with some road infrastructure improvements. And what we do then is have a look at all of the proposed speed management strategies and what the likely impact on 85th percentile and mean speeds is likely to be, so that we can model the impact of those treatments. Just to give you an idea, what we're doing is basing that on logic. So if you change a speed limit reduce it by 10 miles an hour or 10 kilometers an hour, you typically get a change in actual speeds of 2 to 3 kilometers or miles per hour. So we will model a smaller impact on actual speeds than the full speed limit change, if that makes sense. And then if you pair that with average speed cameras, for example, which are really, really good at getting compliance perfect, then we'd model the full impact of the speed limit change down to the actual speed limit, because we know you're going to get good compliance. So what we're planning to do next within the route review tool is to bring in this notion of a safe speed, but also then to bring in more considered speed management countermeasures into the mix, so that we can model the impact of speed related changes more easily. Now, we very deliberately build that speed management scenario first before we look at the road safety engineering measures in the route review tool. And the reason for that is that road safety engineering countermeasures will be more or less effective depending on the speed of traffic. So we have to go for them in isolation, if you like. So we model the speed stuff first, and then we look at the infrastructure measures that are still needed once you've got those speeds to the desired level, or once you've applied the speed management approaches that you can apply. So then we get the road authorities to go off and use the route review tool themselves, with a little bit of support. And then finally we have a modelling assurance meeting to check that the countermeasures have been applied appropriately. So the actual meaning of the countermeasures in the IRAP model can sometimes differ to our assumption, and we just need to make sure that everybody's understood that when we talk about clearing roadside objects from the roadway, what we're talking about is a full clearance to 10 metres of all roadside objects, all of them within that 100-metre stretch, as opposed to just taking out one or two here and there as we can, if that makes sense. So we just make sure that those countermeasures have been applied correctly, so that when we work with funding authorities, that we can actually assure the way that those have been modelled. If we can't find the right countermeasure. The intention is to build more countermeasures into the route review tool, but also we can sometimes find a proxy that estimates the impact of the real treatment in the real world. So this is the process that we have gone through when it comes to the Safer Roads Fund very recently. As I say, the results of that were launched in April, and it's the process that we will go through with other authorities that are working through trying to come up with implementable schemes. I hope that's been a useful insight into how we've been using it in the UK.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Susie and James, for your presentation on the route review tool. And
Franco,
a
would
big,
you
yep,
like me to give a demonstration of the actual what the results will look like now that I've remembered to press the process button?
it would be great. Let me give you the permission again to share screen.
Thank you. Excellent. So you should see the route review tool coming back up at your end.
Yes.
Yep. So here you can see the one I thought I prepared earlier and obviously hadn't. And you can see that I processed it today. So after you finish processing it, you download the data from Vida to overwrite the previous baseline, and then you can open it. And when you do open it, it'll look very similar to it did before. As I was saying, you've still got the baseline data, so you can still look at those star ratings and the fatality, but you've now got your UDIP results as well. So you can see how the star ratings would now look for vehicle occupants or the fatality estimations. Likewise, you can go in there and open up the user-defined investment plan. Now, bear in mind for this one, I just wanted something very, very simple. So I went through removing all of the countermeasures and just put on some central hatching, which is why you can see it's only just one countermeasure now. But that's actually showing me if I just wanted to do that on this road, this is what I would get in terms of fatal or serious injuries reduced over that 20 years, and this is what their benefit would be. And likewise, in terms of the star ratings, this is what they would change to. So you can see it hasn't made significant change to the road, but it's made some, certainly for the vehicle occupants, and especially more if you look at the smooth results. So what I can do is encourage people who have got creator access to any data sets is to go and have an explore of the review tool and see how it can benefit you in your role. At the moment, one word of warning is the route review tool has been made available in the English version, or UK terminology. And so some of the countermeasures might be slightly different names to the ones you're used to. In due course, we are looking to actually build in the translation functionality so that more people will be able to get it in their own relevant languages. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to Franco.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you very much, Susie, both for your presentations, and a big congratulations on the development of this tool, of course. We are now in time to have some Q&A. This is the same panel that I showed you before, but this time you have the possibility to actually raise your hand and ask your question yourself. James and Susie, during the presentation, we had a couple of questions. I'm going to direct those to you now. The first one is from Gabriel. He's asking what facility or formats are available to unload the displayed or processed information with the edited improvement measures for inclusion in reports, presentations, or briefings. This thinking to communicate with the client once you did the work, let's say.
So at this first stage of it, it's very much you're able to do screen grabs of it and stuff like that. But also remember, you can, if you're a normal user for Vida, you can go back into Vida and find that reprocessed data set. The only one to be very, very cautious of is have a look through it, and that data set will actually have multiple different variations of the road in there. So it will have the original baseline, it will have each countermeasure built in individually, and then all the countermeasures built in combination together. So what you'll need to do is only select the combined countermeasures in there in Vida, but then you can get all your standard reports out of Vida as well.
Thanks for your answer, James. And then we have two questions from Simon Dong. I'm going to start with the first one, which came with while you were sharing screen, James. He says, is there any possibility of overlaying the planned countermeasures somehow onto the street view for an initial visualization?
At the moment, not onto the street view. But certainly one of the things that's on the development path for it is to actually put them over the Google map or the baseline map, so that you could actually see a map of where the countermeasures have been suggested. But to actually put them into the street view would be a little bit of a challenge at the moment.
Perfect. And let me direct you the second question that Simon did. It says, to what extent is the modeling calibrated? After a countermeasure has been implemented, is the site reviewed to see if the actual change is in line with what was predicted? Sorry, and if there are differences, is the modeling adjusted?
Yes. So what this does is, for your original road, the baseline road, you will have previously calibrated this as you would do any normal IRAP data set. What the route review tool does is it utilizes that calibration, but keeps your calibration factors exactly the same. So it will then run the data back through Vida with exactly the same settings. So for example, the calibration factors will take care of things like what's the vehicle fleet like, what's the drink driving behavior, seatbelt wearing, how many people in the vehicles. Those are all the kind of types of things that are actually compensated for in the calibration factor. It'll just keep those consistent because they're not changing from one to the other. So when you process your data, it'll actually come out with brand new fatality estimations saying, based on those changes, this is what your new fatalities would be.
Thank you so much, James. There is one last question written that came right now from Daniel. He's asking, and I'm going to read it, of course. In the route review process flow, when you remodel the baseline, do your work on the assumption that all the hazards are logged accurately, or do you carry out any in-depth analysis updating as required with the highway authority?
Yes, we'd certainly recommend that if there are any attributes that have been incorrectly coded, to have gone back and correct those. But yeah, all data should have gone through quality assurance process. So the hope is all of that, or the intention is all of that should be minimized. But yes, if you do find errors in the coding, very much so, the corrections can be made.
Yeah, absolutely. As James says, particularly when you're slicing out individual routes from a national survey, you do find that there are one or two things that will slip through because the coding teams are human. There's a quality control process, but ultimately you can't expect that to be an absolutely perfect representation. So in the route review tool, we've got the coded attributes that you can display as you move along, and if anybody spots anything, you can go back to that baseline coding. But the thing that we find really, really important is getting a better sense of the cycling and walking activity that's on the route, because that really does need that localized knowledge. And the other thing that can sometimes happen is that coding teams can't tell if a lighting column is a frangible lighting column, but the local team might know that it is. So the coding team will always code a lighting column as being a unsafe roadside object, effectively, but actually that local knowledge brings us that sort of better understanding of what's there sometimes. So yeah, absolutely, there's an opportunity to get that baseline as good as you could possibly get it. If you're really keen, you would undertake pedestrian and cycle counts and use those data to drive that process. We've never had time, because it's always been such a short time period for the local authorities to develop their plans, but so we've always had to just go with that best local knowledge. But ultimately, yeah, the better the data that goes in, the better the results that come out of every model. So a truism almost, isn't it? But yeah, getting that right is really important. But then also that broader appreciation of how the route could be used in the future if we could better support walking and cycling becomes a really important part of that process, where we then re-baseline to see, okay, if we elevated the active travel to reflect how we should be moving on that route, then what would the impact be? And then you model your countermeasures from that perspective. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, James and Susie, for your answers to the questions. We don't have more questions. So before doing the closing remarks, I would like to let you all know that we are working with James, Susie, and the team to have an active training course on route review tool, which is now being developed and will be soon available for you in our training platform. This course will give you, of course, a better understanding of what was presented today, but also a chance to start using the tool and start practicing and start liking it and start getting confident with it. So that training course, hopefully it's going to be available soon. Of course, we are going to announce it when it's ready. I would like again to thank Susie and James for being available to do this second RAP Knowledge Live on Route Review Tool. And thank you all for your attention. Sorry for the moments with a little bit bad connection at the beginning, but at the last, the connection was great. So it was a great presentation. This presentation, as it was asked before, this presentation and the video of it will be available in our website, irap.org/training. And also the information of the June's event on RAP Knowledge Live will be there. We are planning to announce it, both topic and date, within these days. So please keep posted on that. And of course, here is my contact details in case you want to ask something, to let me yeah, to send me questions that you would like to James and Susie or other presenters to reply to you, and I will happily forward those to them and bring you an answer to the matter that you're asking. So thanks again all, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.